Hello, focus group folks. I wanted to do a video for you again. I did a video for you before our second focus group, and I wanted to do another one before our last formal focus group meeting, partly because, or mostly because, we have a lot to cover in the last one. Last week for the semantic measures, we really only had 2 measures that we covered. This time around, we're going to have 4 to do, and they take some explaining. So it's going to be much more efficient for us if I can give you some background information before we do this. So you've seen this slide before, and it's stuff that's embedded in the same slideshow of the, let me switch these out here, of the slideshow that you saw before, but I'm going to go into details about different parts this time. So it comes from the same place. I did want to start back here to just kind of ground us again in our developmental model. I know you all read that developmental paper, and it's worth revisiting again. It's really important for all of our measures. So I just wanted to go through a few points about this again, as we constantly in our lab, in our work, we constantly come back to this developmental model. So a couple things I wanted to point out. The way that we think about this, remember, this is based on typical development. So let me get this out of the way so you have to see that. In typical development, kids move from single words to early word combinations to grammar development. We're really going to be focusing on this grammar piece today. So the way that we teach kids to use AAC is starting in the same way that kids who use spoken language use language. So we're going to be making sure that we're starting with these single word kinds of utterances. It doesn't mean that we're never ever going to use pre-programmed phrases and sentences. Of course, that's just a really practical thing to do for certain things, like certain types of greetings, like how are you or whatever. But we want to be really thoughtful, and we try to be really thoughtful and respectful of the way kids learn language typically, as we think about helping them to build their language skills using aided language in the same way and in the same order, and filling in the gaps where they have those gaps as children do who use typical development. That was a whole lot of words there. So back up. So basically, we use our developmental model to help kids go from that single word phrase here into early 2-word combinations, into multi-word combinations and phrases and sentences and clauses. Now, of course, some kids who use AAC may have a number of holistic phrases or sentences or clauses that they're programmed into their devices, and they use those. But if they're not also using single words or learning how to build these 2-word combinations, so not just bake or cookie, or make or cookie, but then make cookie, and learning how to combine those things. As we talked about last time in focus group 3 about, you guys seemed pretty excited about using different parts of speech. So, measuring different parts of speech, because it brings attention to the fact that you may really be focusing on nouns and verbs, but not so much adjectives and the other parts of speech. So here, it's just bringing you back to here, reminding you that where we're coming from, we're moving from those single word utterances here semantically, where we want to increase the number of words, and that we have a measure for that we looked at last time, as well as increasing diversity, which we also looked at last time, into these early word combinations, where here we're increasing the number of words as well as the diversity of those words and diversity of word classes as well, and then getting into different semantic relations. And then here this time, we're really going to be getting into this syntax, where kids are putting multi-word combinations together, and morphology, eventually adding in that grammatical morphology. This is a reminder, this is a good place for me to remind you that in typical development, kids are using bound grammatical morphology as early as 2 years of age, right, in typical development. So they're going to be using that plural S. They're going to be using that progressive ing early on in development. Okay, so we're going to be honing in here as well as over here, and getting into more complex grammar which is we're talking about 2.5 years of age in typical development. So this is very early that kids are moving through all of these stages and getting to the point, and we're going to help them build their language so that they can put those words and phrases together to build those clauses and sentences, including the use of some bound morphology where that's appropriate and called for. So that's what I want to hone in on today. I've already introduced you to the CAKE framework, so I'm not going to go through all this again, but this is here if you want to pause and review this. And then the CAKE framework itself, we're really going to be focusing on this last meeting on phases 3 and 4. Last time we focused on the arrow. I described this to you. I didn't show it to you again, but this is where we lived in focus group 3. And then focus group 2, we were focusing more on those pragmatic functions early on in development. So we're moving up our CAKE framework here. So for today, for the aided language measures here, the ones I've circled here are the ones that we're going to be focusing on for our focus group. This is the weighted the WMLU sim here. This is weighted MLU and symbols. The word order score is really built into this, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And then we have these other 3 measures here. So it's really the weighted MLU and symbols, unique subject verb, grammatical intent, and inflectional morphemes. Those are our 4 measures. So I'm just going to present these to you in the order in which they're in my slideshow. They may come up in a different order in the focus group because there's some I know are going to take a little more time, and I want to make sure we have enough time for them. So I'm going to flip things around a little bit. But in any case, the first one in my slideshow here is grammatical intent. So the basic question when we are measuring grammatical intent that we're trying to answer is this: is the grammatical intent of the sentence clear? So as an example, I have, let's say the target sentence here is the pig is sleeping, and the child says pig sleeping. This is a childlike sentence. A sentence has a subject and a verb. That's what makes a sentence a sentence. A sentence has a subject and a verb. That's true for a clause as well. But in order to, so anyway, we have pig sleeping that the child says here. The child is missing the article here. The child is missing the auxiliary verb here. So they're missing a couple of words. It's not an adult-like sentence that's almost or is exactly grammatical complete, but we still know what the kid is trying to say. Okay, so they're getting their point across. They're getting enough words in there that you know what they're trying to say. An example that does not have grammatical intent would be, I think this is the example that I'm going to use in the focus group, is something like dog bowl. Okay, if a child says dog and then says bowl, I don't know if that child means a possessive relationship like dog's bowl, or they want to say the dog has a bowl, or something else that has to do with dog and bowl. You don't know what the relationship is there because they're missing some critical information. But with pig sleeping, we know what the basic information is that they're trying, the grammatical intent is, all the grammar isn't there, but the intention is really there without me having to make some guesses. Okay, pig sleeping is clear. We've got a progressive form going on here. We may not know, is it present or past? Is it the pig was sleeping or the pig is sleeping? But the basic grammatical intent is clear. You don't need to get too hung up about the specifics of the operational definitions here. I just want to get the general flavor across to you. So this is one of the measures that we're using. We've been a little surprised that we've had good reliability with this. And we've gone back and forth on how important we think this really is. I like, if we can define it well enough, I like this measure because it's telling us that we're moving out of, we're not just in early symbol combinations, but we're starting to really see those relationships across the different words and between the different words to know what the intent is that the child's trying to say. So it's really meant to be a measure that's showing us that we're moving from phase 2 into this phase 3 here. So that's the intent of that one. So we'll talk about that one. Another one that is a little more sophisticated is grammatical morphemes. Now, some of you may think, you may not, but some of you may think, like morphemes are kind of the fluff. They're the icing on the cake, and man, the kid doesn't have enough cake yet. I do not want to argue that we should be giving every kid all the morphemes right from the start and blah, 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 if they don't even have single words. Like that doesn't make sense. So let's go back to development and look at typical development. Once kids have 2 and 3 word combinations in spoken language, they are using grammatical morphemes, and we know which ones they use early on. And there aren't very many in English. There are only 8 of them in English. So, and I'm going to list them in the focus group for you, or you can look them up. You can go online and look up what are the 8 English grammatical morphemes, and you'll find a list quickly. It's 3 different kinds of S. It's present progressive, or not present progressive, just progressive ing, past tense, ed, etc. There are a few others as well. So we wanted to, again, with an eye towards clinical feasibility, have a simple measure of grammatical morphemes. It's a lot like that measure that we talked about, one of the semantic measures we talked about for word class diversity last time, where we're not looking and counting every single grammatical morpheme that they're saying. We just know that there are 8 of them in English, and we're looking to see how many out of those 8 did this kid use in this sample? Did they use 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 0 out of the 8 English inflectional morphemes? If we're looking at English, there are way more in Spanish. There are way more in lots of other languages. We are not a very inflected language in English, but in any case, we only have 8 in English. So it's only, you're just doing a simple count for, okay, I'm going to look for ing. Are there any INGs? I'm going to look for plural S. Are there any plural S's? So it's a simple, it's meant to be a simple count as a way to track, are we getting from here to there, and do I have my mind set at all on the grammatical morphemes? So that's what the grammatical morpheme measurement is that we're going to talk about in the next focus group. Okay, this one, I'd be surprised if you have all heard of before. This one comes from Pam Hadley. Some of you may know who she is. She does a lot of work in spoken language, and with kids who are really just moving from single words into 2-word combinations. And she's been looking for markers of kids who have a true language disorder, and looking for markers very early on, as opposed to kids who are late talkers who actually catch up with their peers. This is one of the measures that she's been looking at, and I think it may have some real utility in AAC. So it's called unique subject-verb combinations, and it helps map the path from early symbol combinations into childlike sentences. So remember that the CAIC framework is based on Pam Hadley's work to begin with. And so she really is looking at, moving from this early combination phase into these childlike sentences. So here's how you calculate it. Okay, it's a simple, to me, it's a simpler way of taking a language sample or analyzing a language sample than the way I was originally taught to. So you have the child's productions over here. This is just what the child said. You don't have to worry about what the target is. You don't, always necessarily know, or typically don't know what the child's necessarily truly trying to say. You just look at what the child actually did. Okay. So if the child says, "Hi, dog," there's no unique subject verb anything, because you only have a verb phrase. There's no subject. So there's no sentence here. So there's nothing to code. So there's no subject. So I don't code anything here. Dog, jump, bed, on. Oh, well, we have a subject, dog, and we have a verb, or a verb phrase that starts with jump. So I have a subject and verb. Okay. So the unique subject and verb is dog, jump. We don't worry about the rest of the utterance. We just write down what the subject is, and we write down what the verb is. Okay, the core of the subject. And then we have dog, jump, bed, on bed. That's actually the right word order. The kid already produced this subject and this verb. They produced dog and they produced jump. So that's already there. So you don't have to write that one down again. Then we have pig sleeping. The core of that one, the core subject and verb is pig sleep here. I washing big lion. The subject is I. The main verb is wash. So we have wash. Lion's bed. Now here we have a noun phrase, but we don't have a verb phrase. So there's no verb. So there's nothing for me to do here. So in this very, very short sample of 6 utterances, we have 3 unique subject verb combinations. We have dog jump, pig sleep, and I wash. So the number of unique subject verb combinations for this tiny sample is 3. That's how you calculate this. You would do this for a much larger corpus, obviously. And so you want to keep track of these over time. So what Pam has found is that this can be a good marker, the number of unique, let me put it this way, the number of unique subject verb combinations that typically developing kids have between 24 months and even 24 to 27 months. It's a pretty narrow window, or 24 to 30 months changes dramatically. Okay, that's in typical development. So she's been looking at it as a marker for possible language disorder. So I think this may be a good measure in aided language, in part to help remind us that, again, going back to, it's kind of also a measure of both semantic diversity as well as a grammatical measure, because you're looking at these combinations and you have to have some semantic diversity in order to get different and unique subject verb combinations. So it's a reminder to me of the kinds of vocabulary that I'm making available, as well as I get a look at, get a window into how's the kid combining these words without it being so complicated that it's hard for me to manage. So that's unique subject verb combinations. And then the last one that we're going to talk about is the measure out of all of them that we've been the most excited about, and we think maybe has the most utility out of all of them. Although we could be totally wrong about this, so probably shouldn't have even have told you that. But anyway, I just rewound. I'm going to say something a little different. This is the measure that we've already looked into the most, and we have a lot more work to do with it. So you are all very familiar with MLU, mean length of utterance, in spoken language. There are all kinds of issues that I'm not going to get into in my short little video here for why using MLU straight up in aided language is problematic. We tried to address some of those known issues with our measure where we're weighting the MLU that I'm going to show you how we did it in a minute here. And we're looking at it in symbols. So we're taking two issues that are unique to aided AAC into account. One of them is symbol relevance, and we already talked about this in a former focus group. So we're only looking at the relevant symbols. We're not doing anything with the symbols that we determine to be irrelevant. So we're looking at the relevant symbols, and we're also looking at the word order. Kids tend to make certain types of errors on their aided language productions. They're not totally predictable, but some patterns are predictable. We did a study a few years back, I think it was published in 2019, where we looked at different types of aided language utterances to see what kinds of errors, mistakes, differences that they had. And we saw different error patterns with adjective nouns than we did with subject verb object sentences, for example. With those subject verb object utterances, the kids tended to have more word order issues. So in any case, we know that there are word order problems that do exist. So we wanted to develop a simple way to code word order that was hopefully going to be clinically applicable. So this is our simple scoring that we came up with. Use score an utterance as 0 if there's no discernible word order in an utterance. I'm going to show you an example here in a second. So a 0 is no discernible word order. 0.5 is there is some word order, but it's also not totally fine. And then a 1 is there are no errors present. Okay, so our formula for calculating the weighted MLU sim, it's actually the weighted MLU sim score is the number of relevant symbols times the word order score. So actually, let me get out of here and change this. There we go. Okay, so here is our example here. So the child says, the target, now it's easier to show you this if I give you specific targets. So if the target is I hide dog and the child says hide dog, that's fine. Both of those symbols are relevant. Hide and dog are both relevant, so they get credit. They said 2 words or 2 symbols. They had 2 symbols here. This is all aided language. And so they had 2 relevant symbols. So they had 2 here and they get 2 here. And there's nothing wrong with their word order, right? Hide dog is fine. They didn't say dog hide. They said hide dog. So the word order score is a 1. So 2 times 1 is 2. Their weighted MLU sim score is going to be a 2. So use the formula here and that's a 2. Dog is jumping on the bed, and the child says, dog jump bed on. All the symbols are relevant, but here we have a word order issue where on and bed are flipped. Okay, so dog is fine, dog's in the right place. Jump is fine, jump's in the right place, but the last 2 words are not. So there's some word order apparent, but there are also some errors. So that one gets a 0.5. 4 times 0.5 is 2. We score that one as a 2. We get to the third one and everything is correct, right? They don't have all the morphemes and everything in here, but that's okay. They have dog jump on bed. There are 4 relevant symbols and the word order score is fine. So 4 times 1 is 4. I gave these 2 examples in particular so that you could see the kid. This is basically the same sentence here. It's just, it's 2 of the words are flipped. So the kid's getting half credit for this sentence versus this sentence. Okay. So we're not giving as much credit if the word order is off. And then for the last one, the kid's trying to say lion's train, but he actually says lion's car. So it's lion, and then, oh, I did this wrong. Can you believe I did this wrong? I can't believe I did this wrong. The number, I've presented this at national conferences and have done it wrong, and I just caught my mistake here. So lion's train, now my math's gonna be off. Oh, well, I'll figure it out. Okay, so lion's train, and it's lion's car. This is lion plus the symbol, the apostrophe S or S, added an S on there for the possessive. And then car, those are 3 symbols there. But, oh, I did have this right. Only 2 of them are relevant. So there are 3 symbols there. See, I did this to make sure you were paying attention. That's what I did. Oh my goodness. All right. Sorry guys. All right. So it has 2 relevant symbols. 2 out of 3 symbols are relevant. The lion is relevant and the S is relevant, but the car is not. So we don't count the car, we only count the relevant ones. That's what I'm trying to say here. So then 2 times 1 is 2. So instead of getting credit for 3 symbols here, they get credit for 2 symbols here. 2 times 1 is 2. And then just like any other time you calculate MLU, once you have your sample, and again, you normally have a much bigger sample, you add everything up. 2 plus 2 plus 4 plus 2. I didn't fix this one. 2 plus 2 plus 4 plus 2 divided by 4 is 2.5. So for this sample, the child gets a weighted MLU of 2.5. You know, I don't want to make this video too long, but I also do want to show you something else real quick. Let me find it. Documents, articles, move me. We had a paper that just came out, our Down syndrome paper here. And we, in the Down syndrome paper, the data that I'm just going to show you the graph from this paper. We had a control group and an intervention group. So the control group is in this orangey melony color here, and the intervention group is in purple. And this is in weighted MLU and symbols. You can see up here, weighted MLU sim. And the control group did not do as well as the intervention group did after they received 4 months of after the intervention group received 4 months of our intervention. So we've started to use this measure in our published papers, but you know, we also want to make sure it's clinically feasible, or see what you guys think about the clinical feasibility of it. Okay, so that is it. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the focus group. All right, thanks everybody.